Welcome back into my office. Brian here with you, and we're going to look at what is a rare book, actually, from the probably early to mid 19th century. It's in this worn full leather binding. This binding is interesting because it has looks like they've done some math of some kind on the cover, which is a really unusual thing to do, is to use the exterior of a book to write on it. It's not something you see often, and it was done a long time ago. The spine is, of course, well chipped, but the leather is supple, and it is a very interesting book once we get inside, because the majority of people looking will not be able to read this title page here. And I'm not going to pretend to be able to speak Welsh, but this imprint is Wales, and it's a Welsh geography book of the world. And I'll set it down on the table and hold it upright and rest the front board like so, and I will show you this first folding map of the world. Interesting in that the imprint is Edinburgh. But what's also interesting is, for instance, well, coming across here is mountains of the moon within Africa. But this repair here is just so primitive. It's an early crude repair, which I find fascinating on old paper. The things that people attempted to do to restore or fix is fascinating, and often it's amateur, if not crude. What is interesting in part about this gazetteer, it's a gazetteer, and it's probably maybe I'm going to say 40s perhaps. Well, look, here we are, 1848 right there. Yes. And so it's entirely in Welsh for the most part. There's almost no English language found within here. It does have a series of these folding engraved maps, which appear to be quite heavily soiled. This is all finger soiling, splitting down the middle. This gazetteer was very heavily consulted, which is an interesting fact about a Welsh gazetteer of this era. Yes, it was subjected to quite heavy usage. And here we have like a distance chart between major locations. And I'll flip through it so you can see both most of the maps, hopefully, as well as how the text block paper survives. It's conceivable that as I flip through it, for this video, just to show you an overview, it's conceivable that I'll miss a map or two, but we will very carefully collate it and present the actual factual number in our description, but I'll try to catch them all as I basically just flip through to show you, like so. What's interesting is the text is completely in Welsh, but some of the titles are in English, like China. I don't know if that's because there is no equivalent in Welsh, or it's just a formatting of taking, I'm not sure. I'd be speculating about the use of the typesetting and the use of forms that pre-existed, or stereotype plates, or I don't really know what would explain that. It's not that significant a point, but it's just something to think about and speculate on. This is interesting because what we see here is a mountain range just cutting straight across the center like so, which of course is not really accurate. And so here we are. I'll keep very heavily thumbed example. It's kind of remarkable. Like, this was a really heavily used book. Whoever owned this book at some point really was into their geography. This is really something. There's some stains there, which is why I like to show so you can really see. We do our best to reveal everything because we want you to know in advance what you're getting. The last thing we want is an unpleasant surprise or an unhappy recipient. So we're always trying to err on the side of overemphasizing the flaws. That can be a bit of a drawback, because once you start talking about all the small issues, it can make something sound far worse than it actually looks. This is interesting. This appears to be some sort of binding paper used on the spine at some point that is just a stray waste paper, really, that someone tucked in here long ago. Chances are right, it matches this under paper here of the spine, so at some point that spine was probably separated. This book has a very interesting history of usage, and it is indeed very scarce. And it is available now online from me, Brian DiMambro.